Princess stood at the large window of her quarters on Concordia Prime space station. The stars looked cold and distant, just like she felt toward the humans who shared this diplomatic meeting place. Her blue crystal skin caught the light from the nearby sun, making her look like a living jewel, but her beauty could not hide the anger in her dark eyes. She hated humans more than any other species in the galaxy. To her, they were nothing but violent animals who had somehow learned to fly between the stars. They started fights with everyone they met and called it progress. The Empire had been peaceful for thousands of years before these creatures appeared with their loud ships and crude manners. The door chimed softly. "Enter," she said without turning around. Her advisor, Commander, walked in with his head bowed low. "Your Highness, the human delegation has arrived for tomorrow's meeting." "Of course they have," said with disgust. "I suppose they brought their weapons and their stench with them." "The station security reports they followed all protocols, Princess." Finally turned from the window. Her long silver hair moved like liquid metal as she faced her advisor. "Protocols mean nothing to barbarians, Commander. They may follow the rules today, but tomorrow they will find excuses to break them. This is what humans do." She had good reason to hate them. 3 years ago, human ships had attacked a patrol near the border worlds. 5 of her people died in that fight. The humans claimed it was self-defense, but knew better. Humans always claimed innocence while planning their next attack. "What do we know about their delegation?" she asked. Commander activated his data pad. "The leader is Ambassador Sarah. She has a reputation for fairness, but she is still human. Their security chief is Captain, her brother. He fought in the wars." "A warrior, then. How typical." Walked to her desk and sat down. "The humans send their killers to a peace meeting and expect us to trust them." "The Galactic Council requested that all delegations bring security, Your Highness." "Because humans make every place dangerous," she replied. "Before they joined the galactic community, we never needed armed guards at diplomatic meetings." The next morning, entered the main conference hall wearing her formal royal robes. The deep purple fabric made her crystal skin glow even brighter. Other alien species bowed their heads as she passed. She was used to this respect. The Empire was old and powerful, with technology that most species could only dream about. The human delegation sat at a curved table across the room, studied them with cold interest. Ambassador Sarah looked professional in her dark blue uniform. She had short black hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Next to her sat a man who looked similar enough to be family. Captain was taller than his sister, with broad shoulders and careful movements that spoke of military training. His uniform was simple and clean, without the decorations that officers love to wear. When their eyes met across the room, he nodded politely, looked away without returning the greeting. The Galactic Council moderator, a tall being from the insect-like species, called the meeting to order. "We gather today to discuss the disputed territory in the Epsilon sector. Both the Human Colonial Union and the Empire claim rights to these systems." Ambassador stood first. "The Human Colonial Union established settlements in the Epsilon sector 40 years ago. Our people have built homes and farms on 3 worlds in that region. We ask only to continue living in peace." When it was her turn to speak, rose gracefully. "The Empire has had scientific stations in the Epsilon sector for over 200 years. These humans arrived without permission and refused to acknowledge our prior claim. They are thieves and invaders." "That's not true," Captain said quietly. The room fell silent. It was highly unusual for security personnel to speak during diplomatic talks, stared at him with surprise and anger. "Captain," his sister warned, but continued, "Princess, our people tried to contact your stations when we first arrived. We received no response. The stations appeared abandoned. We would never knowingly build on claimed territory." "You lie," said coldly. Humans always lie when caught in their crimes. Stood up slowly. His voice stayed calm, but his jaw was tight. I have never lied in my life, Your Highness. My people value honesty, even when the truth is difficult to hear. Your people value nothing but violence and conquest, she shot back. You destroy everything you touch and call it civilization. Princess, please, the moderator said. Personal attacks will not help these negotiations. But was not finished. Personal attacks. I speak only the truth. Humans are primitive warmongers who learn to build starships before they learn to be civilized. They bring death wherever they go. Ambassador looked embarrassed. Your Highness, I apologize for any misunderstanding between our species, but my brother is right. We tried to make contact before settling. Your brother is a killer, said. I can see it in his eyes. How many of my people has he murdered in your wars? The room was completely quiet now. Everyone stared at the princess and the human captain. His face was stone, but his hands were clenched into fists. I have killed in war, he said finally, but only to protect innocent people. I take no joy in death, and I have never murdered anyone. All humans are murderers, replied. You simply call it by different names. That evening, news came that changed everything. A human colony ship carrying 10,000 civilians had been destroyed near space. The ship's emergency beacon blamed warships for the attack. Ambassador demanded an immediate investigation, declared that the humans must have provoked the attack somehow. The peace talks fell apart within hours. As the human delegation prepared to leave, watched them from her window again. Captain walked with his sister toward their shuttle. His shoulders were straight and his step was steady, even though she had insulted him in front of the entire galaxy. For just a moment, she wondered if she had been too harsh. Then she remembered the dead patrol and pushed the thought away. Humans deserved no mercy and no second chances. They were exactly what she had always believed them to be, dangerous animals who would destroy anything beautiful in the universe. The stars still looked cold and distant as the human shuttle disappeared into space. Soon, there would be war again, and this time would make sure the humans learned their place in the galaxy. 3 days after the humans left Concordia Prime, was still angry about the failed peace talks. She stood in the station's garden dome, watching the artificial waterfall flow over crystal rocks. The peaceful sound usually calmed her mind, but today nothing could wash away her hatred for the humans. Suddenly, the station's alarm system began screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere and a mechanical voice announced, "All personnel report to emergency stations. Hostile ships approaching. This is not a drill." Ran toward the diplomatic quarters where her guards waited. The corridors filled with panicking aliens from dozens of species. Through the windows, she could see dark ships with strange designs attacking the station's outer defenses. "Void Reapers," someone shouted. "The Reapers are here." Felt cold fear run down her spine. The Void Reapers were savage pirates who turned their bodies into machines. They took no prisoners and showed no mercy. They attacked space stations to steal technology and sell survivors as slaves. The station shook as enemy weapons hit the outer hull. Lights flickered and went out in sections. Emergency power kicked in, but it was dim and red. Reached the diplomatic quarter just as an explosion ripped through the corridor ahead of her. The blast threw her backward into a pile of broken metal and concrete. When she tried to stand up, pain shot through her leg. Her royal guards were nowhere to be seen. They were probably dead, buried under the collapsed ceiling. She crawled forward, looking for her communication device. She found it smashed beyond repair. The princess of the mighty empire was trapped like a common refugee, with no way to call for help. Strange sounds echoed through the ruined corridor. Metal footsteps and electronic voices speaking in the harsh Reaper language. They were hunting survivors, checking every room and every hiding place. Tried to find a weapon, but her guards' rifles were buried under tons of debris. The footsteps grew closer. She pressed herself against a broken wall and tried not to make any sound. Her crystal skin was glowing faintly with stress, making her easy to spot in the darkness. She put her hands over the parts and prayed to her ancestors. "Contact, 3 Reapers moving this way," a human voice said quietly. Looked up in surprise. Captain crouched behind a fallen beam 20 meters away. He wore combat armor and carried a plasma rifle. 2 human soldiers were with him, moving like shadows through the wreckage. "Sir, we should head to the evacuation zone," one soldier whispered. "Negative, survivors first, then we extract," pointed toward where was hiding. "There's someone over there." The human soldiers moved forward carefully, checking for enemies, followed them with his weapon ready. When he saw behind the wall, his eyes widened with surprise. "Princess," he whispered. She wanted to tell him to go away and leave her alone, but the Reaper footsteps were getting closer, and she had no weapon and no way to escape. Her pride would have to wait. "My guards are dead," she said quietly. "My communicator is broken." Nodded and signaled to his men. They took positions around her hiding spot without hesitation. The captain knelt beside her and offered his backup sidearm. "Can you use this?" he asked. Stared at the weapon. She expected him to demand something in return for helping her. A political agreement, information about defenses, or at least a promise to speak well of humans in the future. Instead, he just wanted to know if she could fight. "Yes," she said, taking the gun. "I trained with energy weapons in the Royal Academy." "Good, stay close and follow our lead." The Reapers appeared around the corner like metal nightmares. Their original faces were gone, replaced by scanner arrays and weapon systems. Mechanical arms extended from their backs, each one carrying a different tool of death. They moved with inhuman speed and precision. And his soldiers opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts lit up the dark corridor like lightning. One Reaper fell, but the other 2 kept advancing. Their return fire was devastating, turning solid walls into dust and metal shards. "Is hit," shouted the younger soldier. Private was bleeding from his shoulder, but he kept shooting. "I'm fine, Williams. Keep those things back." Watched in amazement as the humans fought. They moved like one mind in 3 bodies, covering each other's movements without needing orders. When was injured, Williams immediately moved to protect him. When Williams ran low on ammunition, covered him during the reload. This was not the crude violence she expected from humans. This was teamwork perfected through training and trust. They fought with skill and discipline that would impress any military officer. "We need to move," said during a brief pause in the fighting. "More Reapers are coming and we're running low on power cells." They helped to his feet and began moving through the destroyed station. Stayed close to, watching how he made decisions. He never hesitated, but he never rushed either. When they reached a junction, he checked both directions before choosing their path. "Captain," said, "you could have reached the evacuation zone by now if you hadn't stopped for survivors." "We don't leave people behind, soldier. That's not who we are." Thought about those words as they moved. In society, saving the princess would be an obvious choice. She was royal blood, worth more than common soldiers, but spoke as if all lives had equal value. He would have stopped to help any survivor, regardless of their rank or species. They found a group of alien civilians hiding in a storage room. Men, women, and children from 6 different species huddled together in terror. The Reapers had been here before them, and several bodies lay scattered on the floor. "We can't take them all," Williams said. "Too many to move quietly." Looked at the frightened civilians, then at his wounded soldier, then at. She expected him to make the practical choice and leave the civilians behind. Military logic demanded it. "We take everyone," said firmly. "Can you handle point position?" "Yes, sir," the wounded soldier replied without complaint. They spent the next hour moving through the station's service tunnels with their large group of survivors. It was slow, dangerous work. The children had trouble staying quiet, and some of the older aliens couldn't move very fast. Several times, they had to hide while Reaper patrol units passed nearby. Found herself walking beside during one of their rest stops. The civilians were sharing water and trying to comfort each other. "Why did you save me?" she asked quietly. Looked at her with tired eyes. "Because you needed help." "That's not an answer. I insulted you in front of the entire galactic community. I called your people murderers and barbarians." "You were wrong," he said simply, "but that doesn't mean you deserve to die. Your people could use my rescue for political gain, force the Empire to make concessions." Shook his head. "Politics can wait until everyone is safe." Stared at him for a long moment. She had spent her whole life believing that humans were selfish and violent. But here was a human who risked everything to save strangers, including his sworn enemy. Either everything she knew about humans was wrong, or was unlike any human who had ever lived. They reached an evacuation point near the station's docking bay, but it was empty. The last rescue ships had already left. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Void Reaper ships surrounding the station like hungry predators. "Looks like we missed the party," said, trying to stay cheerful despite his injury. Checked his communicator. "No response from any friendly ships. We're on our own." The civilians began to panic. Some cried, others prayed in their native languages. Children called for parents who might already be dead, felt despair creeping into her heart. But stood and checked his weapon. "Then we make our own way out," he said. "No one dies on my watch." Studied the station's layout on his portable scanner. The device showed red dots moving through the corridors like a spreading infection. Void Reapers were everywhere, hunting down the last survivors. Outside, their ships continued blasting holes in the station's hull. "Sir, what's the plan?" asked. His shoulder wound was getting worse, but he still held his rifle ready. "We need to reach the central command center," said. "If we can control the station's defense systems, we might be able to fight back." Looked at the scanner display. She had studied this type of station in the Royal Academy. "That's impossible. The command center is in the most heavily defended part of the station. The Reapers will have taken it first." "Maybe," replied, "but it's our only chance. Even if we reach it, someone would have to stay at the manual firing controls. The automated systems are damaged." She pointed to the scanner. "Look at these readings. The person operating those controls couldn't evacuate when the fighting starts." Nodded slowly. He understood what she was saying. It was a suicide mission. Williams checked his ammunition count. How long would they need to hold the position? "Long enough for help to arrive," said. "I'm picking up signals from a fleet, still hours away, but they're coming." Felt a spark of hope. Her people would save her if she could survive that long, but then she realized what was planning. "You intend to sacrifice yourself at the firing controls," she said. "If necessary." "No," her voice was firm and commanding. "I should take that position. I'm more familiar with the station's systems and I'm not injured like Private." Shook his head. "No one is staying behind. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," snapped. "And I am a princess of the Empire. My life matters less than the lives of these civilians." "Your life matters just as much as theirs," said quietly. The simple words hit her like a physical blow. In all her years, no one had ever said anything like that to her. She was royal blood, born to rule and command. Her life was supposed to matter more than others, not the same amount, but spoke as if it was obvious truth. They moved through the station's service areas, avoiding the main corridors where Reapers patrolled. The civilians stayed close together, trying to keep the children quiet. Helped carry supplies while and his soldiers scouted ahead. When they reached the command center, they found the massive blast doors sealed tight. Bodies of station security guards lay scattered around the entrance. The Reapers had tried to break in but failed to crack the reinforced barriers. Connected his scanner to the door controls. The station commander locked it down before he died. We can get in, but it will take time. How much time? Asked. 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes. She pointed down the corridor where mechanical sounds were growing closer. The Reapers know we're here. And Williams took defensive positions while worked on the door controls. The civilians huddled behind overturned furniture and broken wall panels, checked her borrowed weapon, and tried to remember everything she learned in combat training. The first Reapers appeared like metal demons in the dim emergency lighting. Their scanner eyes glowed red as they searched for targets. Multiple mechanical arms extended from their bodies, each one carrying a different weapon. "Contact front," Williams shouted. The corridor exploded with plasma fire. The humans fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Fell back with a cry of pain as a Reaper blade sliced through his armor. Williams dragged him to safety while continuing to fire. Joined the battle, using her royal training to aim carefully and make every shot count. She watched coordinate the defense with calm efficiency, calling out targets and directing their fire. Even facing impossible odds, he never showed panic or fear. "Doors open," called out. They fell back into the command center, sealing the blast doors behind them. The room was filled with control stations and display screens showing the battle raging outside. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Reaper ships destroying what remained of the station's outer defenses. Ran to the main tactical console and began activating systems. The defense grid is still functional. Most of the weapon platforms are damaged, but I can work with what's left. Studied the tactical displays. Her royal education included military strategy and starship combat. What she saw made her heart sink. There are too many enemy ships. Even with the defense grid, we can't destroy them all. We don't need to destroy them all, just enough to make them think twice about staying. The blast doors shuddered under enemy fire. The Reapers were trying to break in with heavy weapons. Sparks flew from the door controls as the barriers began to weaken. "The doors won't hold much longer," said. He was pale from blood loss but still ready to fight. Looked at the manual firing control station across the room. It was separated from the main console by a heavy security barrier. Once someone entered that booth, they couldn't leave until the battle was over. "I'm going to the manual controls," he said. "Princess, you coordinate from here. You know tactics better than any of us." "No," said firmly. "Let me take the manual station." "Absolutely not. Listen to me, human." Her voice carried all the authority of royal command. "I am expendable here. You have people who need you to get home, needs medical care that only human doctors can provide. Williams has a family waiting for him." Stared at her with surprise. "How do you know about Williams' family?" "I listen. Your people talk about the things they care about. You protect each other because you love each other. Let me protect you now." Before could argue further, the blast doors exploded inward. Reapers poured into the command center like a tide of metal and fury. There was no more time for debate. Sprinted toward the manual firing controls while his soldiers opened fire on the advancing enemies. Provided cover, her plasma rifle cutting down Reapers with deadly precision. She had never fought this hard in her life, not even in the most difficult training exercises. "No," she called out as he reached the firing booth. "Please let me take your place." He turned to look at her one last time. His eyes were calm and determined. "Take care of my men, Princess, and tell them I was honored to serve with them." The security barrier sealed shut with inside. Pounded on the reinforced wall, but there was no way to open it from the outside. Through the transparent aluminum window, she could see him activating the station's weapons. The defense grid came alive with devastating firepower. Plasma cannons and missile launchers targeted the Reaper ships with deadly accuracy. The first enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire and debris, then another and another. But the Reapers weren't retreating. Instead, they focused all their remaining ship's weapons on the command center. The station shook like it was being torn apart. Console displays exploded in showers of sparks. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. Through it all, kept firing. Watched him work the controls with incredible skill, targeting enemy weak points and maximizing damage with every shot. When a Reaper energy beam pierced the firing booth and burned through his shoulder, he didn't even pause. Blood ran down his arm, but his hands never left the weapon's controls. Fleet approaching, Williams shouted over the noise of battle, 10 minutes out. Had to hold position for 10 more minutes. Coordinated the ground defense, directing and Williams to protect the firing booth from Reaper boarding parties. But she couldn't take her eyes off the human who was sacrificing himself for people he barely knew. This was not the barbarian she expected. This was not a mindless killer or a selfish brute. This was a hero in the truest sense of the word, fighting to save innocent lives even though it would cost him everything. A Reaper blade punched through the booth's side armor, missing by inches. He spun away from the attack and kept firing, never missing a beat. His face was set with grim determination, but there was something else there too: peace. He had found something worth dying for. 5 minutes called out. The station was falling apart around them. Gravity fluctuated as power systems failed. Emergency lights flickered and died, but held his position, one man against an entire fleet of raiders. When the warships finally arrived, their weapons turned the tide of battle in seconds. Advanced plasma cannons vaporized the remaining Reaper vessels with contemptuous ease. The survivors fled into deep space, leaving behind only debris and silence. Collapsed over the firing controls, finally succumbing to his wounds. Through the window, could see him breathing but barely. Blood pooled beneath him and his eyes were closed. "Get him out of there," she screamed. But the manual controls had to be shut down properly or the station's power core would explode. It took Williams 5 precious minutes to safely power down the systems and open the security barrier. When they finally reached, he was unconscious and near death, but he was alive. As medical teams rushed him to their advanced healing chambers, held his hand and whispered words she never thought she would say to any human. "Thank you." The medical bay of the flagship was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Walls of living crystal channeled healing energy into sophisticated treatment pods. The air itself seemed to glow with soft blue light that promoted cellular repair. Sat beside's healing chamber, watching the steady rhythm of his breathing. The doctors said he would recover completely, but it would take time. The wounds from the Reaper weapons had damaged more than just his body. They had poisoned his blood with toxic metals that human medicine couldn't remove. "Princess," Commander entered the medical bay with his usual respectful bow. "The human medical team requests permission to transfer Captain to their ship." Said without looking away from the healing chamber. "He stays here until he's completely recovered." "Your Highness, the humans are persistent. They believe their own doctors should treat him." "Their doctors would kill him. These wounds require biocrystal healing. Tell them he's staying." Commander hesitated. "May I ask why this human matters so much to you? 3 days ago, you called his people barbarians." Finally turned to face her advisor. 3 days ago, I was wrong." After left and Williams entered the medical bay. Both soldiers looked uncomfortable in the alien surroundings, but they came every day to check on their captain. Their loyalty impressed more each time she saw it. "How is he today, Your Highness?" asked. His own shoulder wound was healing well under care. "Better, the doctors say he'll wake up soon." Williams pulled up a chair next to hers. "Princess, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you doing this? Taking care of the captain, I mean. Most people in your position would have left us behind on the station." considered the question carefully. Your captain saved my life when he had no reason to help me. I insulted him and his people, but he protected me anyway. Where I come from, honor demands that such courage be repaid. It wasn't just courage, said quietly. The captain always says we protect everyone, not just our own people. He grew up in a place where pirates attack civilians, and he saw what happens when good people do nothing. Over the following days, and Williams told her more about its background. They described Earth's long history of wars and disasters, and how humans learned to work together through necessity. They talked about his family, killed in a pirate raid when he was just a teenager. He could have gone home after that, Williams explained. Could have lived a quiet life on one of the peaceful colonies, but he chose to stay in the military, protecting other people's families. Began to understand that what she saw as human aggression was actually something else entirely. Humans fought because they had learned that sometimes fighting was the only way to protect the innocent. Their violence was not mindless. It was controlled and directed toward specific purposes. She started reading human history files on her personal. The stories shocked her. Humans had faced extinction dozens of times in their short history. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, and alien invasions had all threatened to wipe them out completely. Yet somehow they always survived, always rebuilt, always kept moving forward. The more she learned, the more ashamed she felt of her previous hatred. Humans weren't barbaric, they were survivors. They weren't cruel, they were practical. And they weren't selfish, they just understood that sometimes you had to be strong to protect the weak. When finally woke up on the 7th day, the first thing he saw was reading beside his healing chamber. She looked up from her and smiled. "Welcome back to the living, Captain." Tried to sit up, but the healing chamber kept him gently restrained. "Princess, where are we?" "The flagship Starlight's Edge. You've been unconscious for a week." "My men and Williams are fine. They've been visiting you every day. Very loyal soldiers." "Relax slightly. How long until I can return to duty?" "The doctors say another 3 days for full healing," but she hesitated, unsure how to continue. "There's something you should know. Both our governments are mobilizing for war." The news hit like a physical blow. War. They're using the Concordia Prime attack as an excuse to settle old disputes. The human military command has ordered all personnel to report for duty immediately. "Then I need to get back to my ship." "No," his voice was firm. "You need to stay here and heal completely. Besides, there's more you should know about this war." She explained what her intelligence sources had discovered. The supposed human attack on the patrol 3 years ago, the one that started her hatred of humans, had been a lie. Human ships were actually trying to help vessels defend a refugee convoy from pirates. The confusion came from poor communications and deliberate misinformation. "Your people died trying to save innocent lives," she said quietly. "Just like you did on the station, and my government blamed humans for the attack to justify military expansion in that sector." Was quiet for a long time. "Politics," he finally said with disgust. "Yes, politicians on both sides want this war. They're using fear and old prejudices to make our people hate each other." Over the next 3 days, they talked about everything. Told her about growing up on Earth, about his dreams of exploring the galaxy in peace. Described life in the Empire, the weight of royal expectations, and her loneliness despite being surrounded by admirers. "I was taught that humans were monsters," she admitted one evening. "My tutors showed me videos of your wars and told me this was your true nature." "We do fight a lot," agreed, "but usually because we have to, not because we want to." "I'm beginning to understand that. Your species has faced so many threats that warfare became a survival skill, like the way my people developed advanced technology to survive on our harsh." They were sitting in the flagship's observation lounge, watching the stars drift by. The medical bay had become too confining for as he recovered, so the doctors allowed him to move around the ship. Found she enjoyed these quiet conversations more than any royal ceremony she had ever attended. "Princess," said suddenly, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you really want to be a princess? You seem happier when you're just yourself, not playing the royal role." Was surprised by the question. No one had ever asked her what she wanted for herself. "I never really thought about it. I was born to rule, so I've always assumed I would rule." "That's not what I asked." She considered his words carefully. "I suppose I like helping people, making decisions that protect others and solve problems, but I don't enjoy the ceremonies and the constant attention. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be a normal person." "You'd be good at whatever you chose to do," said simply. "You have a strong mind and a good heart." The compliment made her feel warm inside, but it also created confusion. As a princess, she was used to flattery and false praise, but never said anything he didn't mean. When he told her she had a good heart, he was stating what he believed to be fact. She said quietly, "What will happen when you return to your people?" "I'll be court-martialed for refusing orders. Human Command wanted me to gather intelligence about military capabilities through my relationship with you. And you refused." "Of course, using friendship as a weapon is dishonorable." Felt her heart racing. Friendship. Was that what this was? The warm feeling she got when he smiled at her, the way she looked forward to their conversations, the protective urge she felt when thinking about his dangerous job. "What if there was a way to stop this war?" she asked. "I'd do anything to stop it. War only brings suffering to innocent people." "Even if it meant giving up your military career?" Looked at her with serious eyes. "Princess, I would give up anything to prevent unnecessary bloodshed, but I'm just one captain. I don't have enough influence to change government policy." "You might be surprised," said softly. "Sometimes one person can make all the difference." That night, alone in her quarters, stared at herself in the mirror. Her crystal skin was glowing brighter than usual, a sign of strong emotion among her people. She was falling in love with a human, not just any human, but the one her government would soon call an enemy. The realization should have horrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home after a long journey. Was everything she had been taught humans weren't: honorable, selfless, gentle, and wise. He saw her as a person, not a symbol or a political tool. But loving him would mean choosing between her heart and her duty to her people. If war came, she would be expected to lead forces against human colonies. How could she give orders that might result in death? A message arrived on her personal communicator. It was from the Imperial Council, ordering her immediate return to the capital for war preparations. Time was running out. She looked out at the stars one more time, then made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Tomorrow, she would ask to help her do something that had never been attempted in galactic history: prevent a war through the power of love and understanding. The princess had finally found something worth fighting for. Stood before the communication console in her private quarters, her hands shaking slightly as she prepared to make the most important call of her life. She had spent the entire night planning what to say, but now that the moment was here, words seemed inadequate. Entered the room at her request, fully healed and wearing a clean human uniform. The doctors had done excellent work. No trace remained of his injuries from the station battle. "You wanted to see me, Princess." "Sit down, please. We need to talk about something important." Took a seat across from her, his expression serious but patient. Over the past 10 days, he had learned to read her moods and could tell when something was troubling her. "The Imperial Council has ordered me home," she began. "War preparations are accelerating on both sides. Within a week, there will be shooting between our fleets." "I know. I received similar orders from Human Command. They want me back for intelligence briefings." took a deep breath. I have a plan to stop this war, but it's dangerous and it will require both of us to risk everything we have. I'm listening. There are moderate voices in both our governments. People who don't want war but are afraid to speak up against the military factions. If we could bring them together, show them that cooperation is possible. Nodded slowly. A secret peace conference. It could work, but the on both sides would try to stop it. Exactly. And when they realize we're working together, they'll brand us traitors. I'll lose my royal status and you'll face court-martial. Princess, said quietly, are you asking me to choose between my duty to the human military and preventing a war that would kill millions of innocent people? Yes. Was quiet for a long moment, then he smiled. That's not really a choice at all. When do we start? The next 3 days were a whirlwind of secret communications and careful planning. Used her royal connections to contact moderate nobles who were uncomfortable with the rush toward war. Reached out to human diplomatic officials who believed in peaceful solutions. Slowly, carefully, they arranged a clandestine meeting on New Geneva, a neutral human colony known for its diverse population and tolerance. The location was chosen specifically because humans and aliens lived there together in harmony. On the day of departure, and Williams asked to accompany them. Sir, said, we know this isn't an official mission, but you saved our lives on the station and we trust your judgment. This is dangerous, warned. If we're caught, you could face charges of treason. Williams shrugged. Captain, you taught us that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following orders. We're with you. The journey to New Geneva took 2 days in a small, unmarked transport ship. During the flight, and worked on their presentation for the moderate leaders. But they also found time for personal conversations that revealed the depth of their feelings for each other. I never expected to fall in love with a human, admitted as they watched the stars from the ship's observation window. I never expected to fall in love at all, replied. Military life doesn't leave much room for relationships. What will happen to us if this peace conference succeeds? Took her hand gently. I don't know. I've never been in love with a princess from another species before. I'm not just a princess anymore. The moment I chose to work with you, I chose to put peace above politics. That makes me something new. The secret meeting took place in a conference room at New Geneva University. Representatives from both governments arrived separately, using false identities and civilian transport. The human delegates included Ambassador Sarah, sister, and 2 senior diplomatic officials. The group consisted of 3 noble houses representatives and a former military commander. At first, the meeting was tense and formal. Decades of mistrust couldn't be erased with a few words, but N had prepared for this. They told the story of what happened on Concordia Prime, how they learned to work together and trust each other. 3 weeks ago, I believed humans were barbaric monsters, said to the assembled delegates. Captain proved me wrong through his actions, not his words. He risked his life to save me when he had every reason to let me die. Added, Princess taught me that aren't arrogant tyrants as I was taught. They're people who love their families and want to live in peace, just like humans do. Ambassador Sarah leaned forward. You're asking us to believe that this personal relationship between you two can somehow prevent a war between our species. We're asking you to give peace a chance, replied. Look around this room. Humans and are talking instead of shooting. It's possible. The negotiations continued for hours. Slowly, agreements began to take shape. Shared patrol zones to prevent future misunderstandings. Cultural exchange programs to reduce prejudice. Joint exploration missions to build trust through common goals. Then the conference room doors exploded inward. Armed soldiers from both human and special forces stormed in, weapons drawn. They had discovered the secret meeting and decided to end it permanently. Princess, announced a colonel, You are under arrest for treason against the Empire." A human major pointed his rifle at. "Captain, you're charged with collaborating with enemy forces." The room erupted in chaos as the moderate delegates tried to protest, and the soldiers prepared to open fire. Stepped forward, her royal training taking over. "Stop," she commanded with all the authority of imperial blood. "I am still a princess of the Empire, and I order you to stand down." The soldiers hesitated, but the humans kept their weapons ready. Moved to stand beside, and his soldiers flanked him. For a moment, the room balanced on the edge of a bloodbath that would guarantee war between the species. Then did something unexpected. He dropped his sidearm and raised his hands. "I surrender," he said calmly. "But I want everyone in this room to understand something first. Princess and I are not traitors. We're patriots who love our people enough to prevent them from destroying each other." Followed his example, stepping away from her weapon. "What you see here isn't betrayal. It's hope. Hope that two species can learn to understand each other instead of fear each other." The major started to order his men to fire, but Ambassador stepped between them. "Wait," she said. "Before you arrest anyone, listen to what we've accomplished here today." She quickly outlined the agreements the moderate delegates had reached: practical solutions to territorial disputes, methods for preventing future conflicts, a framework for peaceful coexistence. "This is what my brother and princess risked their lives to create," she said. "Not treason, but a path to peace." The colonel looked uncertain. "These are not official negotiations. Our governments haven't authorized any agreements." "Then maybe it's time for new governments," said one of the nobles. "Governments that represent what our people actually want instead of what the military factions demand." The standoff continued for several tense minutes. Then, unexpectedly, the human major lowered his weapon. "I have a daughter," he said quietly. "She's 10 years old and she dreams of exploring the galaxy when she grows up. I joined the military to protect her future, not to take it away by starting unnecessary wars." One by one, the other soldiers followed his example. The assassination attempt had failed, but more importantly, it had shown everyone in the room what really mattered: the choice between fear and hope. 3 months later, the first official human peace treaty was signed on New Geneva. The ceremony took place in the same university where the secret conference had been held. Representatives from dozens of other species attended to witness the historic moment. Stood on the platform in a simple blue dress, no longer wearing the elaborate robes of royalty. She had formally renounced her claim to the throne, choosing love and peace over power and tradition. Wore his dress uniform, but without military rank insignia. He had resigned his commission to avoid any appearance of conflicted loyalty. As they watched the treaty signing took's hand, "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About giving up the throne? None. About falling in love with a stubborn human who thinks he can save the galaxy," she smiled. "Ask me again in 50 years." Ambassador approached them after the ceremony. "The Galactic Council has offered you both positions as peace negotiators. They want you to help other species resolve their conflicts." Together asked. "Of course. You've proven that the best diplomatic team is one that truly understands both sides of a dispute." Looked at, "What do you think? Want to make a career out of stopping wars?" "As long as we're doing it together." The story concluded 1 year later at their wedding on New Geneva. The ceremony blended human and traditions, with guests from dozens of species celebrating the union that had prevented a devastating war. As they exchanged vows under the setting sun, reflected on how much had changed since that angry confrontation on Concordia Prime. She had learned that the universe was much larger and more wonderful than the hatred she had carried for so long. Had taught her that love was stronger than fear, that understanding could overcome prejudice, and that sometimes the greatest courage was simply admitting when you were wrong. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't won through superior weapons or military strategy. It was won through one man's refusal to hate his enemies, and one woman's willingness to question everything she had been taught. The extraterrestrial princess had indeed hated humans, until one won her heart by showing her that the real monsters were the prejudices that kept people apart, and the real heroes were those brave enough to build bridges instead of walls. Their love story became legend throughout the galaxy, proof that no differences were too great to overcome when beings chose understanding over fear. And on quiet nights, when the stars seemed especially bright, children from a dozen different species would ask their parents to tell them again about the human and the princess who chose love over war and changed the galaxy forever.